It is the Arizona State win total at Caesar Sportsbook. It's not there. You can still, I think, look at maybe some conference championship odds or some division odds, but that win total has been taken off the board. The number that I have pulled, courtesy of Vegas Insider, as it was posted on June 21st, is at 9, and that is the largest number that we're going to take here. So
for Arizona State?
For Arizona State.
I did find a current one. If you guys want to use it, you can bet.
There's 8.5 out there somewhere.
8.5 with even juice.
8.5 with. Do you want to use 8.5 for this? Because that's also the number we're going to have for USC. That's also the number we're going to have for Utah. It's very much representative of this top shelf of the division.
I think it's more current, and like, you know, if I think we should.
It makes me feel better.
Yeah,
8.5.
It's a real pick now.
Okay, so within this context, we're going to say, how much are you looking at the allegations of recruiting violations and anything that, you know, might come down further? We've already had a staff member placed on administrative leave. You know, will there be players who end up getting caught up in this? We're going to dive into all that. But one of the reasons why Arizona State is near the top of this list is not only because you've got a very talented quarterback in Jayden Daniels. You've got a team that's really been building up. But I mean, I look at this non-conference, Southern Utah, UNLV, BYU. When you look at the cross division, they avoid Oregon and have kind of that nice Oregon State, Stanford, Washington State. Always nice to get those teams that we believe, based on the win totals, are probably going to be near the bottom of the North. So Danny, you said it makes you even more confident. Arizona State, we're setting it at 8.5 here for the podcast. Which way are you going?
I'm going to take the over. I am bullish on this team despite their issues. Now, some of this is a bet that this is going to take a while to play out. Like, there aren't going to be players that are ruled ineligible. I mean, we've already seen a coach. Was he dismissed or did he leave?
I thought it was administrative leave.
Yeah. Administrative leave. That to me isn't that significant. Now, I would also, so this is the risk you run, because I would wait and get as much information as you can. But I think if there's good news about Arizona State, I think it's going to go up to 9, and then you're kind of, in a bad spot. But I do think this team, so we've seen teams before in the history of college football been dealt bad news, and they're still good teams, right? We've seen teams miss, potential playoff runs, bowl games, and still dominate, still even go undefeated and make claims to a national championship. So if it's some ruling like that, like they're not allowed to play in bowl season, they're not allowed to do, there was a bowl ban or whatever it is, I don't think it impacts them at all. I think they've got one of the better quarterbacks in the conference in Jayden Daniels, who's really dynamic, who's really exciting. I think they've been crushing it on the recruiting trails, which is a big problem why we are where we are. And you've heard a lot of coaches express concern about that. And I also think their schedule, like when I look at it every time, I see 8 wins that I feel really, really good about. I see 9 that I also feel good, but not great about. And I think the upside is there for this team to really break through and to possibly challenge USC for the division. But I do think these two teams, and we pair them with USC, I think they're the top of the South, and I think it'll be that way at the end.
I'm going under.
Yeah, I'm going under.
Yep.
Yeah. Danny's on a limb.
Yeah. Listen, when Danny said he had to make a call after the radio show, I was guessing it was to Herm. Yeah, I thought that Danny
it wasn't Herm.
Was it really? Oh, okay.
Call his boy.
No.
All right, so we got 3 unders and an over. Tom, do you want to take a stat? Because I've got one on-field and one off-field point that I want to make.
I mean, I don't think I'm going to actually bet this at any point, just because there's way too much that's, that you can't really calculate. But like all that off-field stuff, you have to feel like it's probably going to have some kind of impact on the season, but it might be the impact where, the whole team kind of, us against the world, rallies around it, goes out and has a great season. It's just, when I think of this Arizona State program under Herm so far, it's like that first season, like the expectations were so incredibly low. It was a hire that was mocked by most people. Like, what the hell are you doing? And then they really exceeded expectations, but they still only finished 7-6. And then the next year, expectations were raised and they disappointed, but they did improve. Last year, everything kind of got thrown out with COVID, and they finished 2-2. So it's like, I like Jayden Daniels. I've liked him for a while. I've hyped him up on this show for the last few years. I think they're a talented team. I think they have recruited well. It's just there still seems to be a point in that program between talent and execution on the field that I haven't seen them quite hit just yet. And because of that, and because of the fact that they haven't won 9 games yet under Herm, and because of the fact that they have all that stuff going on off the field, I have to stay under, because there's a realistic chance that, you know, the second half of the season is just a complete waste, as it's all interim coaches.
So Danny discussed how he thinks they have 8 wins that are basically locks, and another couple that he feels really good about. And I think that's really kind of the big difference between us two. You know, for me, personally, I think if you see 8 guaranteed wins on this schedule, you kind of regarding them as like a top 10 caliber team, right? Maybe not a top 10 finish, but like one of the best top 10, top 11 teams in the country, probably. I'm more in that sort of 20 to 25 range for them. And so my number 7.9. So I'm going to go ahead and take the under here. I think Jayden Daniels has a lot of talent, and I don't know who you want to put this on, right? Maybe it's on the young receivers last year. Maybe it's on him. Maybe there's some combination of both. But man, they were very inconsistent throwing the football, and it's a 4-game schedule, right? And one of the games was an Arizona team that had basically just totally quit. But like, man, what were they, 100th in passing success rate last year nationally? That's pretty poor. And that's adjusted for opponent, obviously. So, you know, they're not getting double credit for crushing an Arizona team that had basically quit. They would hit some explosive plays through the air, but man, just they could not move the ball consistently through the air. The other concern I have about them is their run defense. They were 119th in rushing success rate allowed last year. There's some teams on this schedule that can run the football kind of sneakily. I think BYU will still be able to run. At Oregon State is a team that can definitely, I think, run the football on them. Stanford may be able to run. So I'm a little bit questioning how many of those are locks. I think they'll trip up in one of those games, to be honest.
You don't think worst case they're 5-1 to start the season?
Let me pull up the actual order of the schedule.
Because they go Southern Utah, win. UNLV,
Win.
I'm giving them
That's
win.
a win.
I don't
UNLV
think
is not there yet.
BYU is going to be very good this year.
I agree. I think that's a win.
I think that's a win. Colorado at home, I think, is a win. UCLA on the road, I think, is one of the ones I would put as a 1, but I think they can beat Stanford at home. So I think they're 5-1 leading into a road game at Utah, which then it's a little bit more dicey. Then I've got Washington State as a win, and then they need to get one of USC, Washington, and then I think they win Oregon State, Arizona. But that gets them to 10, actually. I don't know. I think the team's closer to 9 than they are to 7.
See, I'm counting the other way. Like, instead of trying to count up the wins, when you're at the top of the board, I start looking for the losses. And when I see the schedule and I'm going at UCLA, at Utah, at Washington, and USC, that is a very, very tough proposition for me to think that you're going to be.
I think they get one of those. That's all they need.
But that gets us to 9-3. And so you think
which is an over.
Which isn't over, but you think there's no
they
slip
can't
up.
have a slip up.
Right.
Can't have a slip up. That would be like, and that goes to Bud's point of, if this is a top 10 team, you're 0, you're locking those up. I see your point totally about back end 2025, where those games, you can think they're locks. We can write them W's when we're talking about it now, but the reality is the inconsistencies come into play, and it makes them way more toss-up games.
And so for the NCAA stuff, I'm not concerned about penalties specifically in season. I'm concerned at the level of detail in this dossier. And I understand that, some of the coaching changes have been made, but I would not feel comfortable at the trust level within that program based on, what's going on. You get in trouble and then you're trying to figure out, where it came from, and everything was already secretive with the whole COVID recruiting operation. It's just not something that I'm not going to be betting this. I'm not going to be locking this up, but if we're giving gambling advice, that is built into my under, the idea that not only can I get 3 or 4 games that I think could be losses, but when we talk about no slip ups and no inconsistencies, if there's any kind of, if anybody is not on the same page as someone else, that could be the razor thin margin that we have in this division.
Yeah. And another thing too, to point out, like, if they're going to get to 9 wins, they have to, like I think like the 4 road games, UCLA, Utah, Washington, Oregon State, the 4 road games within the conference are going to be huge. You're going to have to win at least 2 of those to get to 9 wins. But the problem is under Herm in conference play on the road, they're only 4-7.
11-11 overall, 500 team against conference opponents so far. But hey, he gave us that Michigan State win. That was fun. Got us all going, got us all really excited. All right. So Danny riding with this guy fresh off a phone call for all the latest intel on the Sun Devils. three unders for
I don't think Herm's talking to anybody in the media right now, just to be clear.
You're very, very correct about that.